What did that weird person do at your school? A kid with a glass eye who would take it out for $1 and walk up to anyone, stick it to their shoulder and sweetly whisper, "I've got my eye on you." Needless to say, we spent quite a few dollars on him. Sounds like a budding entrepreneur. She tried riding a chicken and killed it. We were on a school trip to the countryside in middle school and there were some farm animals around, and I guess she just got it into her head that she could ride one of the chickens. She caught it, sat on it, and promptly squashed it. I suppose she panicked and tried to dispose of the body because all I remember is loads of people screaming and pointing up a tree where the dead chicken was resting on a branch. She'd thrown it up there to hide the evidence, but I guess someone had seen her do it and told everyone else. I don't even know what kind of punishment she got. I don't think the teachers had ever had to discipline a kid for sitting on a chicken. He went by the name Critter. He had bright yellow hair, a bunch of animal bones tied to his backpack, and rode a unicycle to school every day, claiming to be training for a dark circus. LSU also had a unicycle guy when I was there, but he had dark black hair and also wore a stovetop hat every day. If you said hi to him while walking to class, he would tip his hat to you and go, "Good day sir, madam." Dude was weird, but also nice. Chainmail guy at UC Berkeley. Wore a full suit of chainmail to every class and had a sword too. The university eventually told him that he couldn't bring the sword anymore. There was a guy at Buffalo UB that I would see around campus in a familiar grey cloak. Upon closer inspection, he was behind me in line at a Starbucks. I realized his brooch was none other than a leaf of lothlorine. Not idly do they fall. I wished I had one. This isn't particularly weird. A weirdish guy in HS made a fake bomb, popped it in the library return bin, then called in the bomb threat from a payphone in the school lobby. It took the cops a very short amount of time to figure out who did it. He was charged and convicted of public mischief. Fast forward 20 years or so, same guy gets charged and held without bail for 2 years over a laundry list of charges related to the G20 summit in Toronto. Ultimately, he was found not guilty on all counts. A kid in my class peed his pants and got sent home to change his clothes. He then came back to school with different clothes, but with the same pair of pants. Ronald dump in a bag. He took a crap into a plastic bag, took it to our year's common room and swung it around his head. We had a weird kid, but he was mostly really awesome. He wore all green, every day. I saw his closet. It was like all the same plain green t-shirt and green shorts, and then one green suit. It was like a cartoon sight gag. He had bright red hair. Everybody said he was a leprechaun. Every time he had to and wasn't forced to, i.e., pay clothes or whatever, he was in green. At dances he had a green tie, except on St. Patrick's Day, he wore all black. We had a guy openly jerk off in science class. They sent him to some special school. I had a kid in my English class who always dressed up as something and pretended he was that object. Once he was a train, week after he was a dog. Some kids had a binder full of hair, like one of those 5-star zipper binders. They would go around asking everyone for hair, and by the end of the year this binder was full of it. They would pull it out of their own head, find it on the ground, pull it out of people's heads, whatever. On the last day of school on lunch break they released it into the wild. I have to admit, seeing a tumbleweed of hair blowing across the street was pretty funny. We had a special kid in class who, in the middle of an etiquette class, stood up, went to the front, yelled out "bra" and started taking off his clothes. He's also been caught humping his pillow while fully nude during school trips. Etiquette class. I assume he failed. Talked to his imaginary friend called Wilma. I asked him about her, and he told me, "This isn't my invisible friend, I'm her invisible friend. She made me up during a lonely childhood." We had a girl who, for 5 years straight, at every break time would sit outside of the girls' toilets and read only Watership Down. Good book. There was this weird guy in my middle school who used to do the weirdest crap. I was friends with him because some of the crap he did was so funny that I would hurt myself trying not to laugh in class. One of his favorite things was to scoot his desk inch by inch when the teacher wasn't looking at him. By the middle of class, our class was arranged 4 rows of 3 desks, one of these formations on each side of the classroom. Each group was facing each other so that there was an empty central area. He would have scooted his desk into the very center of the room between both groups and island into himself. The teacher would eventually walk over and push his desk, with him in it, back in place. As soon as she sat back down, he would make loud motorcycle noises and quickly and blatantly scoot his desk back to the center, ramming several other desks in the process. This went on all year. He once took a crap in the middle of the locker room floor during PE. It kinda looked like a turtle. He used to loudly sing a song he made up between classes. It went, "Big dongs on the horizon, I keep sucking them hard." He was sort of like Tom Green pre-Tom Green. This was the early 90s. I could write a book about his many antics. What insightful lyrics. Halo Kid. In high school, he was in an eternal game of imaginary Halo. You could run up to him and yell energy sword and pretend to stab him. He would drop all his books and act out a painful death, no matter what. One time I did it and he said, "AWW, I'm going to be late." He still committed to it though, as he slowly bled out in the ground, groaning the whole time. You could throw plasma grenades too. He'd jump out of the way most of the time, but every once in a while, you'd stick that sucker and he'd leap up as he was exploded, throwing all his books and papers everywhere. He was one of the most well-liked kids in the school. That weird person legitimately believes that he's a spider. We had a boy in 4th grade that was really into horses. I've heard people saying that every school has a girl obsessed with horses, but the only time I ever saw this, it was a dude. He always brought a book bag full of horse dolls and would play with them at recess. Everyone thought he was weird, but no one picked on him, thankfully. For a couple weeks after Columbine, there were a few weird guys in my high school that deliberately wore trench coats to school every day. My high school banned trench coats immediately after Columbine. It was pretty reactionary, and what made it worse is that there was a poor kid whose only coat was a black trench coat. They wouldn't let him wear it, and he couldn't afford another one. She would lie on her stomach on the swings until she passed out. The first time she did it, everyone got worried and crowded around her, so she would do it every day until by the end it was, sadly, totally normal for everyone to be playing while this girl laid on the swing about to pass out. Quiet guy broke his arm in gym class. He proceeded to go to class like nothing was wrong. Ambulance was called 1 hour later after a student finally noticed the bone was sticking out of his arm. 6th grade, she claimed to have gotten pregnant and absorbed the baby because there wasn't enough food at her house. She would also walk down the hallway at school holding her stomach and said it felt like her uterus was falling out. One day there was something red smeared on the ceiling of the library, like a lot of something. We all assumed it was from her uterus. In primary school we had a kid that ate everything. Chalk, paper, crayons, glue, Pritt stick, blue tack, plastic, rulers, toilet paper, his nails down to the quick. Caught him licking the blackboard once, and somehow he was still pretty popular in his way. This kid could not spell his name when he was like 9, but he still had several little girlfriends. And then in secondary there was a kid who decided to sabotage his own room on a school trip, including flinging about and breaking his diabetic supplies, in order to frame a friend he had taken issue with. This friend would have been fricked if the kid hadn't been figured out. There was a kid in my school who was absolutely obsessed with buses, but nobody knew for the longest time. Dude loved buses so much that he disguised himself to look like the one bus driver and began borrowing his bus going on joyrides. He was really tall, so reaching the pedals wasn't an issue. They finally caught him in the act and it was a real shock for everyone. He had good grades, was big into chorus and school band. Nice guy, just loved buses. He had a hit list, in case he ever went postal. He also loved to talk about how he had no friends. Every conversation he was involved in gravitated to that point. I tried to reach out to him, I really did, but dang did he make it hard. He lived in his own apartment at the age of 13, adjacent to his parents' house. I remember one day he was talking about calling in a helicopter to pick him up from school because he was irritated about the traffic. Used to talk about how we had snipers positioned on the opposing roof awaiting his instructions to take people out. Indian kid with a weird New York accent. Looking back, he probably had a pretty serious condition. He was a complete donk for the most part, though. A kid with Asperger's made up his own dance routine and would always be performing it during class, lunch and assembly time. He once performed it in front of the whole school wearing nothing but pants, an open vest with no shirt and a fedora. I had a friend with Asperger's in high school who did this. His song was Peanut Butter Jelly Time and he threw down. He put a mouse in a magic bullet and filmed it with his phone. When I lived in the dorms, we had someone put a baby mouse in the microwave. The smell was the first clue something was wrong. Frick people like that. We had a guy who everyone seemed, disturbingly, to like even though he openly slapped the lamb chop pretty much every day in class. One kid crapped in a urinal while allegedly fondling himself. The only vaguely Middle Eastern kid was caught with a hit list, right after 9/11 and not too far removed from Columbine. Another kid was a menace, always in trouble, kicked out of class. I took my driver's test with him and another kid. He didn't get his license owing to mouthing off to the cop. Years later he would murder his girlfriend and flee to Mexico where he was apprehended a few days later. Good times. He wore the same thing to school for 4 years. Blue sweatshirt with no print, faded black jeans, Nike sneakers, and until junior year no one had ever seen what he wore underneath the sweatshirt. It was a balmy 90 degrees out and finally, 3 years in, he took his sweatshirt off in lab for AP Bio and only 2 people saw. It was a plain black shirt. This wasn't a poverty thing. I asked. He had sets of the same clothes at home. He also had a mini Linux computer instead of a phone and a Google Voice number. For graduation he gave me the Adobe CS5 package for not being a complete idiot. I tried to bake him cookies and he said he wouldn't take any form of payment since the illegal download he did was bad enough. He would occasionally show up to school in a 3-piece suit and he was in my German class almost every year in high school and he was obsessed to say the least. Everyone called him Nazi Chris because, well, he was a Nazi. He also was super nerdy and would play his Nintendo DS in class a lot. I always tried to be nice to him because crap if he lost his mind from all the bullying I sure as heck didn't want to die. One day he told me I was on his list and he wouldn't tell me what the list was. I showed up to school the next day expecting to die and instead he brought me a brownie that he had made and that's what the list was. A brownie list. Overall just a weird ass dude. I had a kid in my class who would just randomly eat loose leaf paper. When he ate a lollipop he would eat the paper stick it came on. When we asked why, he said it was good fiber. We had kid crap himself deliberately when the teacher wouldn't let him go toilet. Had an autistic kid who used to sit in the locker rooms and smell everyone's feet. Smelly, clean, whatever, it was his thing. He'd also remember everyone's birthday. Recently a friend of mine ran into him and he remembered his name and birthday. I graduated HS over 20 years ago. Every school had the one girl that's absolutely obsessed with horses. It didn't help that she was also obsessed with me. And she always has really long hair. There was this kid in my 6th grade class who would pluck flies out of the air like a ninja, put them on his desk, and tear off their wings and watch them walk around. He even built a fence made out of pencils so they can't escape. I sat next to him and he called me over and he had all of the flies' heads neatly lined up in a row, along with their bodies on the other side. He asked me to help him mix and match the bodies and heads. He ate the leftovers. Well, that escalated gradually. This was in the early to mid 90s. I went to a pretty huge school, and because of its size pretty much everyone found some acceptance as some group. I didn't have many friends either, but I had a small group of D&D nerds to talk to during cafeteria. Except for this one loner, goth kid. He was very cute and had long hair that hung in his face. Slim, always walked hunched over as if ready to be punched or kicked at any moment. I never saw anyone hurt him, or even pick on him, but he was the loneliest kid I ever saw in school. Never heard him say a single word. Even though there was a small goth clique, he didn't hang out with them ever. I couldn't figure out why he was so weird, what was so wrong with him that everyone in school avoided him, when even my zero social skills D&D friends with Howling Wolf t-shirts and Star Wars binders in junior year had friends. Eventually I asked someone in my senior year, because he's gay. Everyone knows that. Poor kid. I still remember the way he used to walk in the hallways. Grade 9. drew hentai in his notebooks involving him and girls in the class. When he climaxed he screamed like an and transformed into a werewolf. He did a lot of other weird crap, but that's the main thing I remember. I was a butthole too. I stole one of his notebooks while both he and the teacher were out of the room and handed out pages to the girls that were depicted in them. I feel bad now. He wore a three-piece suit to school every day, without fail. He also claimed to be the actual creator of The Far Side, and that Gary Larson was just his pseudonym. Despite being visibly at least 25 years his junior, when asked to draw, say, a cow or something, he would scoff and say something in a language that he made up. He also once shaved half his head, the left half. After I helped him pick up his dropped books, he looked me dead in the eye, and instead of saying thank you, he said, "When crap goes down here, I'll let you live." In 8th grade there was a kid that a bunch of people made fun of in my Spanish class. One day he had enough of their crap, stood up and said, "I'm gonna bring in my dad's gun and kill all of you." The teacher didn't even do anything about it, but they were nice to him after that. Banged his cat, was proud enough to tell his entire Sunday school class. She would pick dandruff out of her hair, put on the desk, sort it out, grab dust off the floor, sort that out, mix it all together and either eat it or put it in her pocket. I have tons more stories about her too. It was awful. Wore a duct tape tuxedo and stovepipe hat to prom, was denied entrance. Came back in a spaghetti strap dress, was denied entrance. Finally got in with a leisure suit. During a dance-off he tore his leisure suit off, revealing the dress underneath, and danced real hard and dirty with a kid who was a little slow but famous around school for his dancing. After a minute of forcefully humping the kid into the fetal position he was arrested and then got kicked off the track team. So he staged a protest with some friends outside the school, which got on the news. The story the news channel somehow got was that he was denied entrance to prom for having a gay date. He ended up with an MTV episode, one of those true life, I am a teenage whatever the frick. I knew someone who put crappy toilet paper in the sink a few times. He never owned up to it, but it was obvious. 4th grade. He carried a Barbie doll in his book bag and sat by himself at recess and talked to it. 5th grade, same story. 6th grade, more of the same and some butthole new kid trying to make a name for himself starts picking on the doll kid. I put a stop to it and hung around doll kid. Turns out after a week he explains it had been his older sister's doll and the only thing to make it out of the house fire in which the rest of his family died. He transferred to live with distant relatives after that, but the weird kid isn't always weird. Sometimes they are shattered or in prolonged shock. You have been visited by the party pug. He just wants you to celebrate with him. Comment woohoo to celebrate with the party pug. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.